Howdy, this here's Mangy Fedlocks with another product of my overactive imagination. It's called North Country Ballroom, Chapter 1, Coming Home. Oddly enough, Elmer Hansen is the only guy that I know who has lost a testicle in a chainsaw accident. As a matter of fact, come to think of it, he's the only guy I know with certainty to currently only have one testicle. Naturally, living in northern Wisconsin, I've known lots of guys who have had chainsaw accidents. Putsy Hillman lost a couple of toes while clearing a spot for his new garage. Wolfman O'Connor had a saw kicked back and nearly removed one eye as he trimmed an old apple tree. And Buster Tabell tripped on a garden hose while cutting up a big maple that fell in his yard during a storm, opening up his whole thigh and damn near bleeding him dry. Who'd have guessed that lawn maintenance could be so dangerous? Not surprisingly, one of our many nameless summer people with a home along the lake operating under the common misconception that buying a cabin in the woods somehow makes you a woodsman, he nearly got himself killed when he tried to cut down a large rotten birch tree, for as it began to fall, a large portion of the top broke off and crushed him like a bug. Most locals agreed that wasn't a real chainsaw accident though, because he never came in contact with the business end of the chainsaw. It was more or less viewed around town as God's way of thinning the herd. Unfortunately for Elmer, he definitely made contact, and in doing so, joined the long and illustrious line of what we locals like to refer to as a chainsaw hero. Due to a momentary distraction, One Nut Hansen, as he was now doomed to be called, had been cruelly and ignominiously relieved of his previous moniker, Chopper, a name which he loved, in spite of the fact that while many imagined it was conferred upon him in reference to some sort of badass custom motorcycle, it was in fact actually an allusion to a particularly bad haircut he gave his younger brother Donnie back in middle school. Out of necessity brought on by his lack of medical insurance and a budgetary need to return to work as soon as possible, Elmer was cleared for early release from the hospital, although he was told he would have to return for an hour and a half every Thursday afternoon for the next month for rehabilitative therapy. What kind of therapy a one-testicled man has to undergo is, thank God, beyond my knowledge and experience. But Bowser Guitarmson said, and he seemed to know, that without such therapy, One Nut would be doomed to walk with a bit of a lean to one side, pretty much putting it to an end his dream of someday becoming a pro bowler. Although knowing Bowser, he probably just made that up, because Bowser, as anyone around town would tell you, is notoriously full of shit. For his part, Elmer had no intention of undergoing any kind of rehab, naively equating such a term with the trials and tribulations of Lindsay Lohan, or perhaps some pampered ex-rock star with out-of-control drug habit. Since the hospital was 45 miles away and Elmer wasn't supposed to drive until his stitches healed up a bit, he'd called his best friend, Jumper Swanson, who in addition to having the only tow truck within 20 miles, owned an avocado green 1973 Pontiac Catalina station wagon, the perfect car for hauling someone who has recently undergone what Putsy Hillman dubbed the Swedish weight loss surgery, on account of the fact that Elmer's saw was a Husqvarna Model 455, which is generally a really dependable saw. When Jumper showed up outside of Trinity Hospital, Elmer was waiting near the entry of the in a wheelchair, finishing a cigarette while chatting up a rather wide-bottomed nurse who appeared to have no time for him whatsoever. Proud of the fact that he still had one electric window that worked in his Pontiac, Jumper hit the passenger side button, enjoyed the whir of the electric motor engaging, and yelled out to Elmer to ask if he needed any help, to which Elmer replied, "No, I was just thinking it'd be fun to have a little guy time cruising town with you and your rusty station wagon." As he flicked his cigarette onto the lawn, he added, "Of course I need help." Jumper pulled into the nearby handicap spot, turned off his car, and dashed over to assist his old friend and fishing companion. Elmer locked the wheelchair's brakes and slowly straightened up, clearly in pain, but managing to move with tiny steps. Jumper grabbed Elmer's bowling ball bag, which he had used as a travel kit for the hospital, and watching Elmer from behind as he made his way toward the Catalina, observed that Elmer did seem to lean a little bit to the left. As Elmer stood alongside the Pontiac, Jumper told him that he'd have to get in from the driver's side since the passenger door was no longer functional. It seems that when Earlene, Jumper's first wife, now deceased, had the accident with the deer on Howard's Hill back in 1998, the middle of the passenger's door had been dented in just such a way as to make it impossible to open from either the inside or out, though why the electric window would still work was the real mystery. Feeling a renewed wave of pain in his groin, Elmer asked, "How about I just lay down in the back of the wagon? I'd be a hell of a lot more comfortable, I think. That's why I asked you to bring the wagon in the first place, you know." Jumper shrugged apologetically. "I really don't think it'd be too easy to get you back there. The tailgate's so rusted I can't open it anymore, and besides, I got 2 big rolls of fiberglass insulation I picked up for the hunting shack stored in the back. You just climb in front and I'll put the power seat way back for you. That side still works perfect." As they headed out of the parking lot, Jumper pushed a cassette into the player. Jumper had been one of the first guys in town to have a cassette player in his car. He was inordinately proud of his extensive tape collection, which he kept alphabetized in a box in the middle of the front seat. As the voice of Paul McCartney came through the car speakers plaintively singing, "Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be," Elmer wanted to laugh, but he didn't dare since he knew it was going to hurt like hell. Elmer had been home from the hospital for only 3 days when he started back to work in the woods. Bending over while operating the saw wasn't really the problem he feared it would be, but climbing over felled trees required considerable patience and care. He seemed to be healing exceptionally well, and was surprised by the fact that he was actually way more bothered by the bristly new hair growth he was experiencing in his recently clear-cut polar region, as he called it, than he was by any stitches. Even more puzzling to him was the phantom pain which he felt where his right testicle used to reside. His doctor had explained that this was normal, but he didn't see anything remotely normal about feeling a testicle that was now preserved in a jar on a shelf over his fireplace mantel. The fact that he'd kept the jar or the testicle at all was testament to just how little he understood about such accidents and their subsequent treatment. Though nearly in shock after the accident, he'd been coherent enough to recognize that he'd suffered a loss, though initially, upon seeing the blood spatter on his torn jeans and his sturdy Levi's zipper completely eliminated from the scene, he assumed that the loss had involved a more personal and beloved member of the family. Upon closer inspection, he was tremendously relieved to find that which he often affectionately referred to as Little Elmer, huddled in fear but perfectly intact. It was only upon standing up that he felt something warm rolling down his pants leg, feeling very much like the escaping mouse that he had found and tried to keep in his holy pants pocket in 3rd grade. What emerged from the bottom of his pant leg this time looked more like a luminous oval onion than a mouse. After a brief moment of perplexity regarding just what the hell he was looking at, Elmer abjectly muttered, "Holy balls," picked it up, wiped the sawdust and chain oil off of it, put it in his pocket and headed off for the hospital, naively thinking it might be surgically reattached later. It was only when he woke up after surgery that he remembered that it was still in his jacket pocket. And he guessed that the trauma and the considerable blood loss had made him a bit forgetful when he checked into the hospital. The next day, the doctor assured him that testicular reattachments weren't really all that common. And if somewhere down the line he felt that a match set was truly important to him, there were silicone replacements available, or for the same general effect but way less money, they could just use a golf ball. But it had to be a brand new golf ball, and it could not be one of those orange range balls. Elmer was pretty sure the doctor was pulling his leg, but he didn't want to seem dumb by asking him if he was serious or not. Now, just 10 days after the incident, Elmer found himself getting dressed in his best flannel shirt and his roomiest pair of khaki pants, to attend a fundraising event organized for his benefit and clearly, though somewhat misleadingly, billed around town as Elmer's Ball. Thanks for listening.